Published by Dark Horse Comics, Rat God is a 5-issue comic series written by Richard Corben in 2015. Inspired by Lovecraftian themes, this story is set in Arkham, Massachusetts, and follows a strange community that worships a preternatural rat god. This comic series explores some absurd themes of the supernatural, and while it's set in Lovecraft Country, it also references the classic Cthulhu Mythos. As the story progresses, the comic blends Lovecraftian horror with themes of romance and drama, and without further ado, let us dive right into the rat god mythos in detail. Before we go into our video though, we have a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. Thank you very much. Now let's begin. Exploring the Rat God comics. Set in a prehistoric taiga, the comic kicks off on a tense note as Achak and his sister Makitoto seemed to be on the run from an enemy tribe. While the tribesmen hoped to enslave or even kill the sibling duo, they tried to dodge their attacks, but Achak soon fell prey to one of their arrows. He realizes he's no longer in any condition to make a quick escape, and he urges Makitoto to go ahead without him. He further promised to meet her by the river in 3 days, and she follows his instructions and sought shelter in the dense forest. As the days passed, Makitoto's hopes of being reunited with her brother start shattering, and she found herself stumbling upon an automobile from an entirely different time period. While the driver emerges from the vehicle, Makitoto runs away before any interactions with him, and he looks around for help when he comes across Chuck. In a strange twist of events, Chuck bears a striking resemblance to Achak, and he asks the driver for a ride. We soon learn that the driver is Clark Elwood, and he is driven all the way from Arkham. He seems to know Keto, and Chuck then asks him for a ride and insists that he is Keto's brother. However, Elwood points out that the two have very different features and there's no way they could be related. Chuck takes some offense at these remarks, and the two end up in a physical altercation that ends up in a fist fight. As Chuck emerges victorious, he steals Elwood's car and drives off into the wilderness, while Elwood decides to continue his journey on foot. As he makes his way to the town of Lame Dog, he thinks about Keto and even reminisces about the time at Mistacotic University when he first fell in love with her. Unfortunately, Elwood doesn't seem quite familiar with the terrain at all, and he soon loses his way and stumbles upon a few mummified bodies. When he takes a closer look, a black panther lunges at him, and Elwood narrowly avoids death as 2 men come to the rescue. They shoot the panther from a distance and continue their journey on a dog sledge without realizing that Elwood needs their help. As this issue ends, Elwood struggles to get their attention, and they eventually move on and leave him stranded. As the second issue kicks off, Elwood ends up stumbling around the snow to make his way to the town of Lame Dog. He continues thinking about Keto and remembers all of their dates in Arkham. It was Keto who had introduced Elwood to the town of Lame Dog, which had prospered in the late 1800s after Russian prospectors discovered gold mines. After depleting the gold resources, most of the settlers decided to leave, while Zidon Peck stayed behind and started working alongside the Cthulhu tribe. In fact, Zidon eventually learned all about the Cthulhu religious rites and used this information to his benefit to become their new leader. With time, he worked with allied forces to burn Lame Dog's church and force the townsfolk to convert to a new faith. While Elwood remembers all about the history of this town, his thoughts drift back to Keto as he regrets breaking things off with her. As it turns out, Keto used to pose nude for the college's anatomy class as a part-time job, and Elwood had cut her off as he discovered this. While Keto confessed her love to him, Elwood couldn't accept it, and it took him a while to realize he had lost his one true love. He then embarked on this adventure to Lame Dog to apologize to her, but his journey was tiresome and he eventually ended up falling unconscious. While he fell to the ground in the cold, he regained his senses in a cabin and realized that Chuck had saved his life. Chuck then tells him to take his car and go away, and Elwood finally makes his way to Lame Dog and realizes that this strange town is truly filled with people who have rat-like features. He soon checks into a boarding lodge and asks a local woman named Carlina about Keto. However, she doesn't seem too keen on giving him any information, and she advises him to keep a distance from the graveyard and leave town by the evening. An exhausted Elwood decides to get a meal before looking for Keto, but his attempts at finding her seem to have very little success as the locals refuse to share any information with him. After a frustrating afternoon, Elwood finally runs into Damon Peck, who treats him kindly and warns him about staying in Lame Dog for too long. As the day progresses, Elwood encounters 3 men who had beaten him and stolen his hat back in the day in Arkham. He decides there's no better time to confront them and get his hat back, but the fight ends with one of them knocking Elwood out with a bat. While they rough him up, Damon Peck steps steps in to save Elwood and even points out that he might just be useful to the men. As this issue comes to an end, we see that Black Panther again that had been shot and has somehow survived, that he's now making his way to the strange settlement. The next issue kicks off with Elwood waking up in a boarding house while Garlina treats his wounds and tells him to stay away from the graveyard. In fact, she even locks him in his room before leaving, but Elwood manages to escape out the window and follow her. He can't help but notice something strange is going on, and he soon reaches the graveyard to find another mummified body. This time around, there was an entire procession of cloaked cultists who were following orders given by their leader, who wore a giant rat mask. As they continued their rituals before an altar, Elwood noticed a trap door cracking open, and two of the locals were offered as a sacrifice to the creature that lurked beneath the grounds. After this creature devours both their bodies, Elwood loses his mind when he realizes that Quito is next in line to be sacrificed. He immediately jumps in to save her and even fights off many of the cultists in the process. Eventually, he reaches the priest and takes his rat mask off to realize that he is none other than the professor who took the anatomy class back at Arkham. As they proceed to fight each other, Elwood and some of the cultists lose their balance and they end up falling through a trap door. In no time, Elwood finds himself face to face with a monstrous creature who seems to have a rat's skull instead of a head. The beast appears entirely preoccupied with devouring the bodies of the sacrificed locals, and Elwood finds himself drifting off. He ends up in a strange dream where an old woman warns him against falling asleep at the risk of never waking up again. While he tries to make sense of her warning, the woman shows him a vision of a rat feeding on blue fungus and scurrying around a human skeleton before throwing up all over it. The skeletal figure soon starts growing flesh, and in no time it turns into a perfect copy of Quito. While Elwood rushes to confess his love, Quito kisses him and soon regurgitates the blue fungus in his mouth. As Elwood grows increasingly restless, the old woman finally puts him to sleep, and about 2 weeks pass by with no signs of him emerging from the trap door. In the meantime, the boarding house's owner urges Garlina to clear Elwood's room, but she refuses to give up hope. She seems to have fallen for his charms, and her desire to see him again comes true as he finally makes his way above ground by digging through the ground under a tree. He seems quite confused and even questions whether this was all a dream, and the locals seem as surprised as he to witness his survival. Soon enough, the news of his return reaches Garlina, who rushes to find him and even calls him cute. She even tries to seduce him and reveals that someone told her to become friends with him and to have fun. While Elwood seems to be in a much better place than before, his troubles are far from over, and this issue ends with the return of the 3 men who bullied him in the past. The 4th issue kicks off in Elwood's room as he confronts the bullies and even manages to kill one of them with a crowbar. He then proceeds to throw one of them out his window while the last survivor gives him a tough fight and runs to the roof. Elwood soon rushes after him and demands his hat back, and the 3rd thief falls to his death while trying to attack Elwood. Elwood soon returns to the boarding lodge where he becomes friends with Damon Peck. He soon reveals that he is the son of Zachariah Peck, the rat priest, who essentially controls the city. While they talk things over, a rat scurries around the room and Damon freaks out while Elwood kills it. Finally, Damon reveals that he had sent the trio of thieves as a test and that now he wanted Elwood to kill his father. While Elwood seems disgusted at the idea, Damon shows him a naked picture of Quito and even reveals that she listens to all of his commands. He then offers to give Quito to him if he kills Zachariah, and even threatens to kill her in case he fails in his mission. While Elwood thinks things over, Garlina offers to elope with him the very next day, but he finally turns her down. He tells her that he already loves Quito, while Garlina tries to tell him that she might already be dead. Garlina soon fears that Elwood's life will come to an end as well and runs away in tears, while Elwood prepares for Lame Dog's annual costume party. As this issue comes to an end, we learn that Zachariah is already aware of Damon's assassination plans, that he has unleashed his followers on Damon and Elwood. In the comic's final issue, Zachariah orders his followers to tie Damon and Elwood in preparation for sacrificing them to the rat god. While the monsters feast on Damon, Elwood cannot even bring himself to look while Chuck appears out of nowhere as a blessing. He frees Elwood while the creature seems preoccupied, but the rat god soon notices Chuck and captures him. Elwood barely has any time to help Chuck, and he eventually has no option but to escape through a strange passage. As he crawls through it, he realizes that he's back at the costume party and finally finds himself face to face with Quito. They somehow manage to escape together and almost reach the car when the enraged cultists corner them. Shortly thereafter, the rat god himself emerges from the depths of the ground and blocks the car before inching closer to Elwood. However, that Black Panther finally makes a grand appearance and immediately lunges at the rat god. As the two fearsome creatures battle it out, Zachariah shoots at the Black Panther and Elwood before finally aiming his gun at Quito. In a surprising turn of events, Quito jumps out of the way and the bullet hits the car's gasoline tank. This results in an explosion that kills both Zachariah and the Rat God, and Quito immediately rushes to Elwood's side to treat his wounds. Garlina also gives a hand, and they soon take Elwood away on a pickup truck to Arkham. However, they encounter an ancient woman before they leave, and she gives Elwood a ring while bidding goodbye. As soon as they reach Arkham, Elwood meets a librarian friend called Professor Upsley, who identifies the mark on the ring. He states that this mark is essentially an older version of the Elwood family monogram, and that he most probably met one of his ancestors. As some time passes, Elwood decides to go back to Lame Dog with Quito and Garlina, and the comic ends on quite a positive note after embracing the polygamy practices out of the town. He marries both Quito and Garlina, and they live quite happily with their children for several years, while Elwood eventually becomes the town's mayor. Marvellous verdict. And with that, we come to the end of the Rat God comic series, which is more about Elwood's pursuit of love than any monstrous entities. While he does battle some strange Lovecraftian creatures and doesn't shy away from facing the Rat God, Elwood's story ends on a happy note after getting back the love of his life. While we thoroughly enjoyed this comic run, we would also love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't done so already. Otherwise, have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.